Coming up on today's video.
And you won't be left with something clogging your hole, because nobody wants a clogged hole. Hi folks, we are back today with another video, and today we're looking at the Gameboy Pocket, the third, what would you call it, revision maybe of the Game Boy line, with the Game Boy original, you know, the DMG, and they had the Play It Loud ones, and the Colour and the Pocket. For me, the Pocket isn't really one that I've looked at too much, nor have I looked at the Colour lots. I've done a few little videos on them here and there. Mainly the main sort of the daddy of the Game Boy family, if you will, is the ones that I tend to mess around with. But I spotted this one recently on eBay, up for sale for spares and repairs, in nice condition actually. The problem was it said it had a very low sound. It didn't say no sound. It said it had very low sound. And again, the seller was very honest. They said they'd recapped the sound area, which we'll have a look at in a second, but to no avail. And so when we power it on, we hear nothing. If we get right up to the speaker, you can hear ever so slightly the ping. And even if we were to plug in this third party, the newbie speaker thing that I've got, you can just about hear a little bit of sound. I'll just get the game going. I put Jurassic Park in this. We'll get it right up to the... I'm not sure if anything is coming through there, but you can just hear ever so slightly a little bit of noise. And in comparison, what it should sound like, yeah, without the speaker, and then with the speaker, yeah, really loud. So yeah. Now, if there was no sound coming out whatsoever, the first thing I'd do is probably check the jack, throw a bit of IPA in there, and give it a bit of a clean out. I would suspect that perhaps it's thinking that there's a headphones in there and it's bypassing the speaker altogether. But as there's a little bit of sound coming through, I'm wondering if the culprit could be either a corroded or a faulty volume wheel. And that's what we're going to look at replacing today. So I'm just going to take the 6 screws out that are holding it together. And we'll have a little look. Free screwdriver that I got recently when I did a switch battery repair. So I'm just recycling these. They're actually not the worst screwdrivers that I've ever had, and certainly not bad for free ones. They're quite comfortable, and the end is quite sharp. So there we go, there's our 6. So we'll just carefully take the back off. Nothing connected with the back. First connections we see are from the ribbon from the screen. And this is the culprit that we're going to be looking at today, this volume wheel. Zoom in a little bit. I'll pop him there and then zoom in. We can see that there doesn't seem to be any corrosion. Really, there doesn't seem to be any water damage or anything. It's not coming off, it's not coming away. So it's an interesting one. And I know they said it's been recapped, and I'm not sure which capacitors they've replaced. These ones at the bottom here may be the ones that they replaced, or these ones. I genuinely don't know. And the fact that it still turns on and you can hear a little bit of sound, I'm just going to go ahead and assume that they didn't do an awful job with that. For my money, if they've attempted it, maybe they felt confident, maybe they've had a little bit of experience before. Who knows? Let's get the soldering iron on the boil, and we'll get that starting to warm up. And like I said, what we're going to do is we're going to replace pretty much like for like. Oh, I don't know why I said pretty much, because it is like for like. we're just going to drop it in a fresh volume wheel. Pick this up off eBay for a couple of pounds. It may fix it, it may not, but at least it'll be one more thing that we've eliminated. And yeah, we can but try. So the next thing we need to do is get the board out, because I don't really want to solder. Well, I'm not going to be able to do any unsoldering while it's in the case, because we need to get to the underside of it. As you can see, it's got 5 pins there, but it's also got a couple of solder points underneath the board which hold it in place. They're not actually connected to any don't do anything apart from hold it in place. So we take the screws out. So we've got 1, 2, 3. I think that's all of them. It is, isn't it, for this model? And then we'll just very carefully lift out these locks on the screen ribbon. Gently take the ribbon off. There we go. We can leave that as is, as best we can, and we'll start to desolder this. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to desolder. I want to use some wick, and I'm going to use my soldering iron. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of solder first to it, just to try and get it flowing, because this old solder, sometimes it can be a bit of a pain in the bottom. But if we add in some fresh solder, it'll just help it flow a little and should give us a better chance of getting it off. Okay, then we're going to do the same on this side. Just going to add a little bit of fresh solder. Before we put the solder wick across. And the old X-Acto knife. lots of different ways to do this, and I'm not saying that my way is any better. Really, the main thing you're trying to avoid doing is damaging the pads. It's not too bad with these two bits, but you're trying to avoid damaging the pads that they're connected to. Okay, and now once we've got that bit off, this then becomes a lot easier getting these bits off here. There we go. And we can wick again. And we'll just dab a little bit of flux on. tin up the pads, ready for putting the new one on. Give it a little clean. And we'll just clean these holes out. We'll solder them once we've put it in place. So we'll take our new volume wheel and new potentiometer, make sure we get the right one. Hold on. Is that the new one? And we'll move the solder around so I don't set fire to myself. And we'll just pop it in place, and we can use the holes to drop it into place. Got a bit of leftover solder in that hole there that's just stopping us coming through. There we go, that should do the job. Okay, maybe we'll get it in place first. And the annoying thing about these is it's just time. You just have to make sure that you just be patient with it. One tiny little bit of solder left over can just clog the hole up ever so slightly. Just make it a right pain to put in. And then we start ending up with bent legs and all sorts, and it just becomes a bit of a pain. And we need to make sure we get it flush to the board so that it fits properly in the case. So if you can do this with a solder sucker, that's usually a lot better, because it will suck all that dead solder away, all that old solder, and you won't be left with something clogging your hole, because nobody wants a clogged hole. All right, so I was getting a bit fed up there, so I just paused the camera ever so slightly and did it off camera, because I was mindful that some of the stuff I was shooting was off camera. It wasn't quite in the right place, but we've got it back in. Yeah, so we've got it in. We've got the 5 pads soldered back in place. And fingers crossed, I've not done too much damage. I'm sure. So anyway, let's see if that's done anything, shall we? Remember before we had little to no volume coming through. So let's see if we've noticed some solder, some damage there. Looks like from a soldering iron, so like it's been burnt already. I just find ribbon cables a real faff. I don't know whether it's just me with my short, chubby fingers. Let me know in the comments how you get on with your ribbon cables. Perhaps your fingers are more slender than mine. Okay, there we go. Got it all in. I will, in fact, I was going to say I'll screw the circuit board in afterwards. But I won't. I'm going to screw the circuit board in now because irrespective of the outcome, I'm not taking this to bits again today. This may be the one and only time that this Game Boy has its back off. Let's use the right screwdriver, shall we? And if this is a silent Game Boy, then so be it. Where were the screws for the... Oops. Okay, so it's that one there. Oh man, not much luck today with the small bits dropping things everywhere. Oi! Listen to that. Happy days. I wasn't very confident about that. Ho ho! Mega sound. Wow. Well, there we go. I'm quite pleased by that. So just to sort of recap, there was those, it was the potentiometer. And what that does is, you're going to have to forgive me if I get any terms wrong, but essentially controls the flow of, a bit like a tap really, and that allows, what does it allow through? Sort of, would it be voltage? But anyway, whatever it is that it lets through to control the volume, if it's broke, it ain't getting through properly. And I think it must have defaulted to letting barely anything through. So replacing that, we can control the amount of volume that comes through, and we can set it from note to full. When we were off camera, I just went ahead, like I said, and just got that potentiometer, that volume wheel in place. I was getting a bit annoyed with it, if I'm honest, which is why I just sort of took it and shouted at it and then got it on. But, like I say, we've gone from having a Game Boy Pocket with no sound, or barely any sound, and that was the key. If it was no sound, the first thing I would have done would probably be attack the headphones port, because maybe there would have been something in there, some corrosion that was making it think there was a pair of headphones plugged in. So, should we try something? I'm going to say, I'll leave a little bit of room here for some graphics, and we'll put them on. So, so our problem was no sound, which might appear there. Sorry, no, very little sound. If it was no sound, I would have gone for the headphone socket. So I picked up the spare volume wheel. This, I believe, is the same volume wheel that would work in a Game Boy Color as well. That's what it was, advertised at as. So I suspect at some point this has just failed. Perhaps inside there's some corrosion. I was just trying to pop it open. Yeah, so replacing that has given us back the volume. So happy days. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, and hopefully it'll provide a little bit of use to you if your Game Boy Pocket or perhaps Game Boy Color has very little damage, very little volume, sorry. And like I said, if you're sort of cracking no volume, first thing to try would be the headphone port, pop in some IPA, give that a good clean, perhaps with a Q-tip, give it a wiggle around. But for this, with the very little volume, it was in fact the volume wheel. So yeah. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Leave us a comment, give us a like, drop us a subscription. You're under no pressure to do so. All we ask is that you enjoy the rest of your day. Join us for our next video next time, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.